I found out my wife of 11 years was having an affair. I found out a week before Christmas 2023. There are, I imagine, a finite number of ways a man can discover the tectonic plates of his life have been grinding against each other, preparing for a cataclysm he never saw coming. The worst, I suppose, would be walking in on them, the visceral, undeniable act that burns itself onto your brain like a branding iron. I found out in probably the second worst way possible. It wasn't a confession, a guilty text message left open, or a hushed phone call overheard through a door. It was colder than that. It was digital, impersonal. An algorithm's cheerful, soulless invitation to witness the demolition of my world. I found out purely by accident. The kind of mundane, technological fluke that feels like a cruel joke orchestrated by the universe. We had recently upgraded our phones. Hers, an iPhone that had been her constant companion for years, had met a tragic end on our tiled kitchen floor, a spiderweb of shattered glass rendering it unusable. Mine was simply aging, its battery life a constant source of frustration. So, we took advantage of a holiday promotion, a 2-for-1 deal that felt like a responsible, adult decision at the time. When we set up the new devices, a process of transferring data and logging into accounts that has become the modern-day equivalent of moving house, there were photos and videos she wanted from my phone transferred over to her new one. Pictures of the kids at the pumpkin patch, a video of our son's first time riding his bike without training wheels, the usual digital scrapbook of a family's life. To make the transfer seamless, I signed into her Gmail account on my new phone to sync everything with the cloud. It was a simple, practical act, one performed without a second thought. My old phone, the one I had just replaced, was still a perfectly good piece of technology. I kept it, wiped of most personal data but still logged into a few key accounts out of habit, as a dedicated device for playing games and streaming shows while I cooked. A glorified little tablet. The phone upgrades happened in late October or early November, a detail that, at the time, was as insignificant as the changing color of the leaves outside. Fast forward to December. The air was crisp with the promise of snow. Christmas lights twinkled from our neighbors' houses, casting a festive, almost magical glow on our quiet suburban street. I was sitting on the couch, the kids were asleep upstairs, and my wife, Sarah, was in the kitchen, humming along to a Christmas carol on the radio. It was a perfect portrait of domestic tranquility. That's when the old phone, sitting on the coffee table, lit up. The Google Photos app, with its cheerful pinwheel icon, sent a notification. It pinged softly, a sound I'd heard 1,000 times before. The message on the screen read something like, "Check out your memories from 2023. I smiled. I tapped it, expecting to see a curated slideshow of our year. Photos of our 2 kids, Liam and Chloe, their faces smeared with birthday cake. Family outings to the zoo, a trip to the beach in the summer, the kind of wholesome, happy moments that reaffirm you're doing something right in life. What I was not expecting, what no part of my mind was prepared to process, was to find nudes of my wife. The first image loaded, and for a split second my brain refused to compute. It was her, unmistakably. The curve of her hip, the small tattoo just above it that I had traced with my finger 1,000 times. But the pose was wrong. It was a selfie taken from a low angle, her head tilted back, her expression a mix of seduction and submission that I had never seen before. My heart immediately sank. It was a physical sensation, a leaden weight dropping through my chest and settling in the pit of my stomach. I knew, with an instinct that bypassed all rational thought, that they weren't meant for me. In the 11 years we had been married, in all the intimate moments we had shared, this was a side of her I had never been shown. I had often said, usually in a playful, hopeful way, that I would love if she were to take some sexy pictures for me. It was a fantasy, a desire to see her through a different lens, to be desired in a way that felt new and exciting. But she never showed any interest. She would laugh it off or say she felt silly, or that she wasn't confident enough. I never pushed the issue. It was just something I thought would be nice, a private little spark between us. To see it now, offered so freely and so explicitly to someone else, was a gut punch. I scrolled, my thumb trembling. There were more. Each one more revealing, more intimate than the last. The date stamps on the pictures told a horrifying story. The earliest ones were from about a week prior. The most recent, a series of close-ups of her pussy, so graphic and exposed it felt like a violation just to look at them, were taken just the day before. The timestamp read 2:14 p.m. Yesterday. While I was in the next room in our shared home office, working weekend overtime to get ahead before the holiday break. The thought of it, the sheer proximity of her betrayal, made me feel dizzy. She was in our bedroom, the room where we slept, where our children sometimes crawled into bed with us after a nightmare, taking these pictures for another man while I was just a few feet away, oblivious. I realized what had happened. She did not turn her cloud sync off on her new phone. When she took the photos, they were automatically uploaded to her Google Photos account. And because I had logged into that account on my old phone weeks ago and never logged out, the pictures synced there as well. A ghost in the machine had become the messenger of my marital apocalypse. I spiraled very quickly after that. The quiet hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, Sarah's soft humming, the gentle ticking of the clock on the mantelpiece, it all faded into a roaring in my ears. My mind, which I had always considered a logical, orderly place, became a maelstrom of every possible scenario, each one more painful than the last. Who was he? How long had this been going on? Were they in love? Did she think of him when I touched her? The questions were a relentless assault and I had no defenses. I felt a profound physical shock as if I had been in a car crash. My hands were shaking, a fine tremor that I couldn't control. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I almost broke right then and there. I had an insane urge to stand up, walk into the kitchen and hold the glowing screen of the phone up to her face, to watch her perfect, peaceful world shatter just as mine had. But I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by the sheer weight of the discovery. I was able to keep it together, to force myself to breathe, to get my head straight enough to think beyond the immediate, blinding pain. I remembered something. A small detail from the chaotic weeks of the broken phone. In between her shattering the old one and me having the money to pay for the upgrades, she had been using a very old, almost ancient smartphone that we had laying around in a junk drawer. It was a relic, a dinosaur from a forgotten era of technology. It couldn't do much, its battery was shot, and its screen was tiny, but it could connect to Wi-Fi. It let her log into her Facebook and make calls. It was a temporary bridge back to the digital world. With a surge of adrenaline, I got up from the couch. My movements felt stiff, robotic. Sarah looked up from the counter where she was kneading dough for Christmas cookies. "You okay, honey?" she asked, her brow furrowing with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just a work email," I mumbled, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. "Stressful. I'm going to go lie down for a bit." She nodded, her expression softening into one of sympathy. "Don't work too hard. The holidays are almost here." Her kindness was a knife twisting in my gut. I went to the junk drawer in the kitchen, my heart pounding against my ribs. I rummaged past old batteries, tangled charging cables, and dried up pens until my fingers closed around the cool plastic of the old phone. I took it to our bedroom, closed the door and plugged it in. For an agonizing minute, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered to life, the boot-up animation a slow, torturous crawl. Her Facebook was still logged in. She had been so careful in some ways but so careless in others. I opened her Messenger app. My hands were still shaking so badly I could barely tap the screen. I went through her list of conversations, my breath held tight in my chest. And I found him. It was someone from her past, a man she had dated in high school, long before she and I ever met. His name was David. She was smart enough to not have him as a friend on her main Facebook profile, a deliberate act of concealment that spoke volumes. I had no idea how long he had been back in her life. Weeks? Months? Years? It looked like they deleted their messages regularly. It was a clean conversation, showing only a few they had traded that day. But it was enough. It was more than enough. One of the messages was a video. My finger hovered over the play button, a part of me screaming not to watch it, to throw the phone against the wall and pretend none of this was happening. But I had to know. I pressed play. It was a video of my wife, Sarah. My Sarah. She was in her car, parked somewhere I didn't recognize. She was smiling, a genuine, radiant smile that I hadn't seen directed at me in a long, long time. And she was talking. She was picking the names of the children she wanted to have with him. "I think if we had a boy, we should name him Julian," she said, her voice full of a hopeful, dreamy quality. "And for a girl, maybe Olivia." Olivia sounds so classic, don't you think? I have never felt such pain before. It was not the sharp, quick pain of a cut, but the deep, crushing weight of a collapsing building. I was devastated. In that moment, watching my wife plan a future with another man, a future that was a carbon copy of the one we had already built, I almost ended it. A dark, insidious thought slithered into my mind. What need is there for me to still be around? I had already been replaced. My role in her life, the one I had dedicated everything to, was being auditioned for by someone else. The life I thought was uniquely ours was just a template she was willing to use again. A wave of pure, white-hot rage followed the despair. I considered going scorched earth. Taking screenshots of their chats, of her telling him he was sent to her by heaven, and posting them on her Facebook page. sending them to her mother, her sister, her best friends, everyone on her friends list. I wanted to burn her world down just as she had burned down mine. I wanted everyone to see the person she really was behind the mask of the perfect wife and mother. But the only thing that stopped me, the single anchor in that hurricane of pain and anger, was the fact that I still loved her. Even then, in the depths of my agony, with the evidence of her betrayal glowing in my hand, I could not bring myself to do something that would hurt her so profoundly. My love for her, the same love she had just trampled on, was the only thing that saved her from my wrath. And that, I realized with a fresh wave of sickness, was the cruelest irony of all. I couldn't wait. I couldn't pretend. I couldn't sit on this information, letting it poison me from the inside out. The thought of getting through another minute of polite conversation, of eating the cookies she was baking, of watching a Christmas movie with her later as if nothing had happened, was unbearable. I confronted her that same night. I walked back into the living room, the old phone clutched in my hand like a weapon. She was just taking a tray of gingerbread men out of the oven. The warm, spicy scent filled the air, a smell I had always associated with comfort and happiness. Now it just made me feel sick. "Sarah," I said. My voice came out as a croak. I cleared my throat and tried again. "We need to talk." The look on her face was instantaneous. The cheerful, domestic mask fell away, replaced by a guarded, anxious expression. She knew. Maybe not what I knew specifically, but she knew this wasn't a conversation about work stress or what to get my mother for Christmas. "What's wrong?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. I held up the phone. "I think you know." We sat at the kitchen table, the cooling gingerbread men a silent audience to the implosion of our marriage. I asked her to tell me everything. What? With who? How long? And the question that felt like swallowing glass. Had the affair been physical? She barely gave me any straight answers. Her eyes darted around the room, focusing on anything but me. She was a cornered animal, looking for an escape route that didn't exist. She tried to deny it at first, a weak, sputtering attempt to claim the photos were old or a joke or that her account was hacked. But the look in my eyes, the cold, hard certainty, told her that lies would not work. Finally, the trickle of truth began. She admitted it had been going on for a while. A meaningless, evasive phrase. She admitted they had had sex before. "A few times," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She would not tell me who it was, but she didn't have to. I already knew that from the Facebook messages. I told her his name. David. The color drained from her face. Her reason for why, when it finally came, was the most confusing, infuriating, and heartbreaking thing I had ever heard. "I didn't know if you loved me as much as I love you," she said, tears finally welling in her eyes. It was such a bizarre, nonsensical statement that for a moment I was speechless. She had cheated on me, she had betrayed our vows, our family, our entire life together because she felt unloved? She said she did not feel the love from me because I hadn't been getting her gifts for Valentine's Day or Mother's Day. She said that I would not get upset at the things that would make her upset. Instead, I would usually try to get her to look at issues logically instead of emotionally. She painted a picture of a marriage where she was emotionally neglected, starved for affection and grand romantic gestures, and I was a cold, unfeeling robot who only operated on logic. As far as the gift thing goes, it's true. For several years, I had not gotten her anything on those specific holidays. But it wasn't out of malice or neglect. It was because we spent our recreational money already, usually on something that she would want or something for the kids or a thing she wanted to do. A weekend trip to the mountains in April because she needed a break. A new, expensive stand mixer for the kitchen in May because she had gotten into baking. Concert tickets for her favorite band in February. I would always tell her, if we do this thing or buy this stuff now, we won't have any more spending money for the next month or so. And she would always say, "That's fine. I'd rather have this." She never once gave me any indication that she was unhappy with me or our life together. Not a single word. The entire time we have been married, I thought I was doing everything right. I always made sure we had everything we needed. I worked hard, I paid the bills, I fixed things around the house. I always put her wants ahead of mine. I would go to art festivals, farmers markets, and foreign films that I didn't really have an interest in because she wanted to. I never complained. I never dismissed her hobbies or her interests. I listened when she talked about her day. I always made sure we did things and went out, to break the routine of me at work and her managing the house and the kids. I gave everything I had to our marriage, to being what I thought was a good husband and a good father. And now she was telling me it wasn't enough. That my steady, practical love was so deficient that it drove her into the arms of another man. The conversation that night is a blur, a chaotic montage of tears, accusations, and fragmented memories. When I try to remember all the details, my mind feels like it's wading through thick fog. She said she was sorry she hurt me. I honestly can't remember if she actually said she was sorry for the affair itself, if she regretted what she did. The distinction feels important somehow. Hurting me was a consequence. The affair was a choice. She insisted over and over that she never stopped loving me. She said she truly wants to be with me, that David was a mistake, a fantasy that got out of control. I still love her. That's the most fucked up part of this whole situation. That is what makes it so exquisitely painful. The love didn't just vanish when I saw those photos. It was still there, a wounded, whimpering thing in the wreckage of my heart. I want to continue with our marriage. I look at our children, our home, the 11 years of shared history, and the thought of throwing it all away is terrifying. But now I am overtaken with insecurities and doubts. They are a constant poison, seeping into every thought. I was already doing what I honestly thought was my best. I was giving 100%. If my best wasn't good enough before, how can it possibly be enough now? Should I even try? The constant thought that now lives in the back of my mind is that I am fundamentally inadequate, that the way I love is wrong. I feel like my life has lost its purpose. Before, my purpose was clear, to be a good husband to Sarah and a good father to our children, to build a happy, stable life for my family. Now that purpose feels like a lie. I feel dead and empty inside. I have just been going through the motions. Getting up in the morning, going to work, coming home, eating dinner, going to sleep. It's all automated. I'm a ghost haunting the hallways of my own life. I am horribly depressed. When I try to envision my future, I see nothing. It's a blank, gray void. Do I stay in this marriage knowing it will never be what it once was, or rather what I thought it was? Can you rebuild a house on a foundation that you now know is rotten? Or do I call it quits, detonate this life and take my chances on my own? She did message him the night I confronted her. I watched her do it. She sent him a short, curt message telling him it was over and to never contact her again. Then she blocked him on Facebook and deleted his number from her phone. As far as I know, she does not have any other social media besides Facebook. It was a small, necessary step, but it felt like putting a single band-aid on a gaping, mortal wound. She no longer guards her phone when I'm around. She leaves it on the counter, on the nightstand, and I can easily see when she is messaging anyone. It was never like she would hide it from me or get angry if I touched it or anything like that, so that was never a red flag to begin with. Her secrecy was more sophisticated than that. I have also gone through her phone a few times since that night, in the dead of night while she sleeps beside me. I feel a hot spike of shame every time I do it, but the compulsion is stronger. I have not found any indications of it still ongoing, or of any other affair partners. She does seem to be putting in the effort to work through this. She asks me how I'm doing. She tries to initiate conversations. She suggests we watch a movie together. But whether or not she genuinely feels remorse or regrets what she did, I cannot say. Simply because I'm not sure what that is supposed to look like. Is it the constant crying? The self-flagellation? The desperate attempts at affection? Or is it something quieter, something deeper? I don't know. And because I don't know, I can't trust any of it. Every kind word, every gentle touch, every I love you, is now suspect. Is it real? Or is it just a performance, an act of damage control? The days leading up to Christmas were the longest of my life. We had to pretend. For the kids. We put up the tree together, our movements stiff and awkward, a chasm of unspoken words between us. We baked more cookies, the smell of gingerbread now forever tainted. We wrapped presents, sitting on opposite sides of the living room floor in a heavy, suffocating silence. It was a hollow pantomime of a happy family. The most wonderful time of the year had become my own personal, festive hell. And all I could think about was a video of my wife, picking out names for another man's children. The past is not a foreign country, it's a minefield you are forced to walk back through after a tragedy. Every step risks detonating a memory that is now armed with a new, painful context. The days after the confrontation, I found myself doing just that, wandering aimlessly through the landscape of our 11 years together, re-examining every landmark, every shared moment, searching for the clues I had so obviously missed. I thought about our beginning. We met through a mutual friend at a summer barbecue. I remember seeing Sarah from across the lawn, laughing at something someone had said. She had this incredible, uninhibited laugh that made you want to know what was so funny. I was, by nature, a quiet and reserved person, more of a listener than a talker. She was vibrant, a gravitational force that pulled people into her orbit. I was intimidated, but our friend, Mark, dragged me over and introduced us. We talked for hours that afternoon, sitting on a picnic blanket as the sun went down. We talked about everything and nothing: our jobs, our terrible taste in music in high school, our dreams for the future. I felt a sense of ease with her that I had never felt with anyone before. She didn't seem to mind my quietness. In fact, she seemed to draw it out of me, asking questions and genuinely listening to the answers. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the person I've been waiting for. Our courtship was, in my memory, perfect. We took things slow. We built a friendship first. We went on long walks, had marathon phone conversations, and learned the architecture of each other's minds before we ever explored the physical. It felt right. It felt solid. When we finally did become intimate, it was an extension of an already deep connection. Or so I believed. Now I question all of it. Was her initial hesitation, her desire to build a friendship first, part of a pattern? Was there someone else then too? A placeholder I never knew about? The thought is a cancer, metastasizing backward through time, tainting even the purest of my memories. I remember one specific conversation from those early days. We were sitting in my car after a date, parked in front of her apartment. "I just want to be sure," she had said, looking at me with an earnestness that felt so real. "I want something that lasts. I'm tired of games." I had taken her hand and told her, with all the sincerity in my heart, that I was tired of games too. I see that scene now through a different filter. Was she talking about the games other people played? Or was she setting the terms for her own? The gift issue. It seems so trivial, so petty, to be the justification for such a monumental betrayal. But as I sifted through the years, I saw the pattern she was talking about, even if my interpretation of it was vastly different. I remembered one Mother's Day maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Liam was about 3 and Chloe was just a baby. We were tight on money that month. The car needed new brakes, a sudden non-negotiable expense that had devoured our savings. Sarah had been talking for weeks about wanting a specific high-end baby carrier, one that was better for her back. It was expensive, almost $200. I told her, "Look, I know Mother's Day is coming up, but with the car we just can't swing any extras right now. But that tax refund should be here in a few weeks. We can use that to get the carrier you want." "Oh, of course," she had said, nodding in understanding. "That makes sense. The brakes are more important." So, on Mother's Day, I made her a big breakfast in bed. I had Liam help me make a card out of construction paper, his scribbles and a handprint a testament to his love. I did all the chores, took the kids to the park so she could have a few hours to herself, and when she came to me later and said, "This was the perfect day. Thank you," I believed her. A few weeks later the tax refund came in. The very next day I went out and bought the baby carrier. I surprised her with it when I got home from work. She was ecstatic. She hugged me, kissed me, and told me I was the best husband in the world. In my mind, I had listened to her need, prioritized our family's financial stability, and then fulfilled her wish as soon as I was able. It was a logical, responsible, and ultimately loving sequence of events. But now, in the shadow of her affair, I hear her accusation, "You didn't get me anything for Mother's Day." And I realize with a sickening jolt that in her mind, the grand gesture on the specific, culturally designated day was more important than the practical, delayed fulfillment of her actual request. The symbolism mattered more than the substance. I had been speaking prose and she had been wanting poetry, and the entire time, I never knew we were reading from different books. Was I supposed to have known that? Was it a test I was failing over and over without ever being given the syllabus? This was the other part of her reasoning, my logic versus her emotion. I am a logical person. It's how my brain is wired. I'm an engineer. I solve problems. When Sarah would come to me, upset about a conflict with her sister or a stressful situation at the kids' school, my instinct was to try and fix it. To offer solutions. To break the problem down into manageable parts. "Okay, so what if you tried this?" Or, "Let's look at it from their perspective for a moment." I always thought I was being supportive. I was engaging with her problem, offering my help, showing her that we were a team and she wasn't alone in her struggle. I never once considered that what she wanted was not a solution, but simply a witness to her feelings. She didn't want a flowchart, she wanted a hug. She didn't want a strategy, she wanted to be told, "That sounds incredibly frustrating. I'm so sorry you're going through that." The cruel irony is that if she had ever told me, "Hey, when I'm upset, I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to listen and validate my feelings," I would have done it. In a heartbeat. I would have made a conscious, logical decision to respond to her emotional needs in the way she needed them met. All she had to do was tell me. But she didn't. She held it inside, this secret dissatisfaction, letting it curdle into resentment. A resentment that, in her mind, was potent enough to justify seeking comfort and validation in the arms of another man. A man who, I can only assume, was a master of emotional validation and on-time gift-giving. And so I wander through the museum of our marriage, where every happy exhibit is now accompanied by a placard of doubt. Our wedding day, was she thinking about him even then? The birth of our children, was my fumbling, terrified, but overwhelming love in those hospital rooms not enough? Every "I love you," every shared laugh, every quiet moment of contentment is now suspect, potentially a lie. The foundation I thought was solid rock was, it turns out, just sand. And the tide has come in. Christmas morning was an exercise in surrealism. The kids, oblivious to the emotional poison saturating the air, were vibrating with excitement. They tore into their presents with the pure, uncomplicated joy that only children can possess. For a few hours, their happiness was a powerful anesthetic. Watching Chloe's face light up when she unwrapped the dollhouse she had been asking for all year, and seeing Liam's triumphant shout as he pulled a new Lego set from its box, I felt a flicker of something resembling my old life. Sarah and I played our parts. We smiled. We took pictures. We drank coffee and said, "Wow, look at that," at all the right moments. But we were like two actors in a play who had forgotten their lines, improvising awkwardly, a palpable tension underlying every interaction. When our eyes met over the kids' heads, there was no shared warmth, no silent communication of love and parental pride. There was just a vast, empty space. Later in the day my parents came over. The charade had to be elevated. Now, we had to fool people who had known us for over a decade. My mother, with her finely tuned maternal radar, knew something was off. "You seem quiet, honey," she said to me in the kitchen as I was carving the turkey. "Everything all right?" "Just tired," I said, focusing intently on the bird. "Long week at work." "You and Sarah okay?" she pressed, her voice gentle. "Yeah, of course," I lied, the words feeling clumsy and foreign in my mouth. "Why wouldn't we be?" She didn't push it, but I saw the doubt in her eyes. The silence in our house after the kids went to bed and my parents went home was the loudest thing I had ever heard. It was a physical presence, a heavy blanket that smothered all air and sound. We cleaned the kitchen without speaking, our movements synchronized from years of practice, but utterly disconnected. Every clink of a plate, every splash of water was amplified in the quiet. Finally, sitting on the couch amidst the debris of wrapping paper and new toys, I couldn't take it anymore. "I don't know how to do this, Sarah," I said, my voice low and raw. "Do what?" she asked, her gaze fixed on the dying embers in the fireplace. "This. Pretending. Smiling for the kids, for my parents. Acting like our world hasn't just been blown to pieces. I feel like I'm losing my mind." She finally looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed and full of a sorrow that, for the first time, felt genuine. "I know," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry for what, exactly?" The question was sharper than I intended. "Are you sorry you did it? Or are you just sorry you got caught?" Her face crumpled. "That's not fair." "Fair?" I shot back, a surge of the old anger rising in my chest. "You want to talk about fair? Don't talk to me about what's fair." "I am sorry I did it," she said, her voice trembling. "It was the stupidest, most selfish thing I have ever done. I know I broke us. I hope we can fix it." "How?" I asked, the question hanging in the air between us, heavy and unanswerable. "How do you fix this? You tell me. Because I have no idea. Everything I thought was real, everything I believed about us, about you, is gone. It was all a lie." "It wasn't all a lie," she insisted, leaning forward, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. "My love for you was never a lie. The good times we had, our family, that was real." "Was it?" I countered. "Or was it just the part of your life you tended to while you were waiting for something better? Was I just your safe option? The reliable, boring guy who paid the bills while you were out there trying to recapture your youth with your high school boyfriend?" Every word was designed to hurt, and I could see them landing, each one making her flinch. A dark, ugly part of me felt a grim satisfaction in causing her a fraction of the pain she had caused me. "It wasn't like that," she sobbed. "David was an escape. From my own head. From feeling invisible. It had nothing to do with you not being enough. It had to do with me feeling like I wasn't enough." It was the first time she had framed it that way. Not as a deficiency in me, but as one in herself. It was a subtle shift, but a significant one. For a moment, a tiny crack appeared in the wall of my anger, a glimmer of something that resembled understanding. I had always seen Sarah as confident, self-assured. The idea that she was secretly wrestling with deep-seated insecurity was a foreign concept. Invisible? I asked, my voice softer now. I saw you every day. I saw you more than I saw anyone else in the world. How could you feel invisible? Because you saw me as a wife, as a mom, as a partner in running this household, she explained, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't think you've seen me as Sarah, the woman, in a long time. And maybe that's my fault. Maybe I forgot how to be her. David, he saw her. He reminded me of a time when I was just a girl with no responsibilities, no mortgage, no kids. Just potential. It was a painful thing to hear, but it resonated with a sliver of truth. Our lives had become a complex machinery of schedules, responsibilities, and logistics. The romantic, spontaneous couple from that first summer barbecue had long since been replaced by the efficient co-managers of a family enterprise. We had stopped dating each other. We were a team, but maybe we had stopped being partners in the truest sense of the word. This did not excuse what she did. It didn't even come close. But it was the first explanation that didn't feel like a direct attack on my character. It was the first piece of the puzzle that made a twisted kind of sense. The affair wasn't about the gifts or my logic or even about David. It was about her. Her own midlife crisis, her own search for an identity she felt she had lost. And I, and our children, and our entire life together, were just the collateral damage of her personal war. The conversation didn't fix anything. The chasm between us was still there, as wide and deep as ever. But for the first time since that horrible night, it felt like there was a bridge, however fragile and rickety, being tentatively extended from her side to mine. The question was, did I have the courage or the foolishness to try and cross it?